So I guess I'm going to wait for the red light. Is that right, Marcos?
Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the Governing Board session on 8 June 2022. I would like to call to order the public hearing. In keeping with the notice given to the general public, we are calling to order the public hearing on the proposed notice of tax increase relative to the truth in taxation requirement and the proposed budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Mr. Sylvan, can you please take a roll call?
Yes, I'd be glad to, Madam Chair. Luis Gonzalez.
Here.
Maria Garcia.
Here.
Dr. Meredith Hay.
Here on the phone.
Damian Klinko.
Here.
And Catherine Ripley.
Here.
All board members are present.
Thank you very much. And for those who are able to, we will rise if you have a flag for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I can start that out. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice forever. Thank you. I would next like to call on the hearing on the proposed property tax increase. During the 1996 legislative session, Arizona Revised Statute 15-1461.01 was passed with the intention to increase public awareness of property taxes. In compliance with this statute, a truth in taxation notice was published in the Arizona Daily Star on May 24th and May 31st, 2022. In compliance with the same statute, Pima Community College District is holding a hearing on its intent to raise primary property taxes on existing property. The board now asks the administration to provide information in support of the proposed property tax increase. After the presentation, members of the public will be invited to comment on the proposed tax increase. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. David B., our Executive Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, to give a brief overview and, if necessary, respond to board questions. Dr. B.
Good evening. Can everybody see the screen? Okay. All right. Chairperson Ripley, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, and guests, it's my pleasure this evening to present to you a brief summary of the proposed property tax levy increase for fiscal year 23. And then following this part, I will also summarize the budget after the tax information is complete. As was mentioned just a few minutes ago by Chairperson Ripley, the college followed the required statutes, the requirements is spelled out in statute, published the Truth in Taxation hearing notice in the newspaper on the 24th and the 31st. And then as following the different requirements as spelled out for the Truth in Taxation process. Just to do a real quick summary, and back in May, we provided more detail to the board, both about the budget and about the tax increase. This is a quick summary of what the impact and the implications are on the taxpayers. If you follow the top of this, this first column here is levy neutral or fiscal year 22. We did not increase the tax levy last year or the year prior. So we call that levy neutral. That is that there's no tax increase to the taxpayers. The taxable value of property in Pima County last year was about $9.7 billion. That's in hundreds, so that's billions. The tax rate for the current year, that's what people are paying right now, is 1.2733. And that generated a little bit over $123 million for the college's operations. Going into this current year, levy neutral, again, that is if we did not increase the tax levy, if the board did not decide to increase the tax levy for the upcoming year, the college is able to assume new growth in property, that's new properties that hit the tax rolls, but would keep tax rates essentially flat for property. So the middle column represents what levy neutral is. Again, the amount of property grew by assessment valuation and also by new property. The tax rate then, if we were levy neutral, would drop from 1.2733 to 1.2383. And that would generate about almost $125.5 million. So levy neutral, we would generate an additional $2 million for the college's operations. Now, what we're proposing in the truth in taxation property process is this third column here, which is a 4% increase to the tax levy. That increases the tax rate over the levy neutral from this 1.2383 to 1.2878. That increase is for a property that's valued at $100,000. That would be for the year an increase of just about $5. So $200,000 property would be about $10 for the year. So somewhat moderate impact on each individual parcel of property. However, it generates a significant amount of revenue for the college. As shown here, the property tax levy goes up to 130 and almost and a half, and generates an additional $5 million over the levy neutral amount. In the budget, we spell out the whys, and we've talked with the board at length about the justification for why to increase the tax levy and what the budget priorities are for why we're recommending the increase of 4%. These next two slides show a little bit of perspective. Pima College, even with this increase, will be still at the lower end of our colleague institutions, as shown here in the lighter blue. We're the fourth lowest in the state. And then longitudinally, you can see we do not have any secondary tax rate right now. So we are just only levying a primary property tax rate. And you can see over time that the tax rate has actually declined over the last number of years as assessment values have gone up and we've stayed flat. And then with this 4% increase, there's a moderate increase in the actual tax rate. So with that, I'll ask if the board has any questions, and if not, then we can, I guess, call on the public.
Thank you, Dr. B. But at this time, we are also basically opening it up to public comment. I don't see anyone signed up for public comment. We will have an opportunity for discussion when we do make the motion after the public hearing. So speak now if there are any public commenters that we missed. I don't see any that have signed up. And I'm not there, so Andrea, could you maybe go back to full screen, because I'm only seeing the Dr. B's slides.
Oh, it's Dr. B's. So just so you know, Chair Ripley, we don't have any members of the public present in the room this evening.
Okay.
Or not at this
great.
time,
So
anyway.
And nobody signed up for this portion of the public comment. They signed up for some later comments. Okay, so if there are no comments, I would like to move on to the next topic. And again, we will have a chance for discussion by board members in the next section. I'm hearing on the next part of this discussion is hearing on the proposed budget. At last month's meeting of the governing board, staff presented a comprehensive review of the proposed fiscal year 2022 to 2023 budget. Following discussion, the board directed that the proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 budget be formally presented for consideration by the residents and taxpayers of the Pima Community College District. This has now been accomplished in accordance with state law by publishing the proposed budget and a notice of this evening's public hearing in the Arizona Daily Star on May 24th and May 31st, 2022. The board would like to ask the administration to give a brief overview of the budget, and after the presentation, we will invite the public for comments as well. Dr. B, again, as Executive Vice Chancellor in Finance, please give us a brief overview of the budget.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. As we discussed in the May meeting, when we go through the budget, the proposed budget in a great deal more detail, I'll summarize tonight the information related to the budget. As we've talked about, the way that the state budget process works is that we set in a formal process in the adoption process the maximum amount that the college can spend on in the given year. The college, if expenditures go down, if enrollment goes down, if other things go down and we reduce expenses during the year, that is okay. We just can't spend above the amount that we have indicated in this in the state budget forms. As you know, our priority in this upcoming year is really to focus on employee compensation. We've gone through a number of years, beginning, actually it's about 10 years now, where there have been state budget reductions and then the limitations related to expenditure limitation that have really constrained the college's ability to emphasize compensation adjustments for employees. And over time, and we'll talk more at length in the regular board meeting with the proposal for the class and comp study, that over time what has happened is our compensation structure has really degraded and has become archaic. And what we've done is a 2-year process to really review and scrutinize our compensation program, tie our jobs and positions to market to ensure that we're compensating employees appropriately for the work they're providing at the college. So the priorities within the budget are to implement the class comp study, to also recognize our adjunct faculty and how critical they are for the education we provide to the community by creating a tier structure that is also proposed and will be discussed later on in the regular board meeting. And then having a minimum adjustment for those employees, those regular employees who aren't getting placed up higher in recognition of high inflation rates that we're all experiencing now and have been recently. And then lastly, the big investment, other than operational adjustments for compensation, are really in continuing to build out our centers of excellence projects, many of which are funded out of revenue bonds, and then also funded through college reserves and money that we've accumulated over time through sort of judicious stewardship of our funds. So those are the priorities of the budget. We included a moderate increase, and the board approved it back in March, of a $2 tuition increase. That was to continue a number of key programs that started up during the pandemic, really availing students with laptops and students who need it and didn't otherwise have technology can lend or can borrow laptops, hotspots, those kinds of things. We want to continue that program that initially was funded out of federal dollars, and a number of other technology-based programs that we're providing to students, and increasing the tuition a little bit to cover some of the costs associated with that. We just talked about the increase to the property taxes, and then there's some increases to the revenues related to STEM appropriations. The state budget hasn't been finalized yet, so we have moderate increases in there for what we expect might happen, some estimates for what we'll get in Prop 207 money. And then the biggest change to the budget that you can see in the summaries is the reduction of federal dollars coming in from grants, because the higher ed relief funds as part of the pandemic relief federal programs is now concluding, and now that's falling off of our budget. So the federal funding did a very nice job of helping to sustain us during a very difficult time, but now that federal money is going away and we've got to absorb that within our own resource structure. As I mentioned last month, the budget has about $9 million set aside for the class comp adjustments. That's a significant increase. About $7 million of that is allocated now according to the class comp recommendation. The remainder of that is having a little bit of money for a contingency for if there are additional increases that come out of the class comp adjustments, and then the fringe benefit costs associated with that, because if you pay people more, you have to also pay for the retirement, you have to pay for the Social Security taxes, et cetera, et cetera. And then we already talked about the other priorities there. So again, we went through this in the main board meeting. The proposed budget is actually a pretty significant reduction from $410.8 million down to 363. That's because we're starting to conclude some of our capital projects and reducing down, and that will continue to decline in the next year or two. But it would still stay high in terms of some of the capital investments because we do have some ongoing projects going on. And then the other big change year over year is, again, the reduction here in the orange section in the grants, contracts, and financial aid, because that's the reduction of the higher ed relief funds from year over year. Lastly, this shows how the expenditures are broken out. Just to remind the board, I mentioned this at the May meeting, is that this reserve line in the proposed budget currently has the reserve money for the class comp structure, that once that's approved, then we'll allocate those monies out to the specific categories. That's why you'll see that faculty, for example, is going down, but once the class comp study, if the board approves that, the reserve money will go in there, and that in the actual expenses, those will go up. Same with staff and administrator salaries as well. Okay, that said, that is a quick and dirty summary of the budget. The state forms have been posted as required by statute, and we've gone through them with the board, and I'll ask if the board has any questions of me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bay, for that presentation. At this time, we're actually welcoming public comments, and I believe there is one person who signed up, and I'm not sure if they signed up for the regular meeting or actually to address the budget. Mr. James Hart, are you on the line? Mr. James Hart, would you like to make your comments now? If it's in reference to the budget? Perhaps he was signed up for the regular meeting. It was a little unclear. Okay, if not, there were no other people signed up for this portion of it. Yes, do I hear? Okay, if not, if no other public comments, we will have a very, very brief 30-second recess. We will adjourn this portion of the public hearing, and we will reconvene in a few seconds the special meeting to consider these two motions. So gather your thoughts. Thank you. The special meeting to order. Having notified the public and conducted the truth in taxation hearing, do I have a motion to approve Pima Community College District's property tax rates and levies for fiscal year 2023? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, could you repeat
Second.
that?
Second.
Okay, we hear a motion by Board Member Klinko and a second by Board Member Hay. And with that, I would like to open up for discussion by board members. Any discussion? I'm looking at the screen. Hopefully I can see y'all. I don't see any hands up for discussion. Please correct me if I'm wrong and speak up. Without any discussion, I would like to ask Dr. Sylvan to take a roll call vote on this motion.
Thank you, Chair Ripley. Mr. Gonzalez.
No on the tax increase, no.
Ms. Garcia.
No.
Dr. Hay.
Yes.
Mr. Klinko.
Yes.
Ms. Ripley.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Sylvan. With that, the motion passes, 3 yeses and 2 nos. And we will move on to the next item. Having met the requirements prescribed by state law for the review of the college's proposed budget, Do I have a motion to approve the proposed budget for Pima Community College District for the fiscal year July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and I now would like to open this up for discussion. Any discussions? Okay, without any request for discussion, Mr. Sylvan, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair Ripley. Mr. Gonzalez.
I know the last time I said no, and I will continue to say no because I saw some items that I think should have been not set there in reference to, as I mentioned the last time, there's a lot of inflation as well now. I think it's not the right time for certain, not all the items, but certain items that I don't agree with. My motion is still no.
Ms. Garcia.
Although I disagree with some of the items on the agenda, I'm going to vote yes.
Dr. Hay.
Yes.
Mr. Klinko.
Yes.
Ms. Ripley.
Yes. Thank you. The motion passes 4-1, and this concludes. Thank you very much for everyone's patience and everyone's due diligence in doing their own research. Thank you, Dr. B, for all of your explanations. And with that, I would like to adjourn the special meeting, and we will take another 30 second to 1 minute recess and reconvene for the regular board meeting. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, if I might. So the regular meeting
Yes.
was scheduled to start at 5:30. I have that it's 5:25, so perhaps we ought to take a 5-minute recess so we start coincide with the time in the notice.
Great. Thank you very much. This has got to be a record that we actually ended early, or ended something early. So we'll come back in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, everybody. And welcome back to the June 8th, 2022 regular governing board session for the Pima Community College Governing Board meeting, our last for the school year till we reconvene in September. So I'm happy to be here. I would like to call to order this regular governing board meeting at this time. The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Consent agenda is published. And board members had the privilege of having a lot of this information about 10 years ago. So do I hear a motion to pass the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Garcia, did you still want to move an item?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'd like to pull 8.32 off for discussion, please.
8.32. I see an 8.3. I don't see an 8.32. Oh, I see it here. It's not in the right order. Okay, delegating authority to execute a contract for construction manager at risk construction services for development of the downtown campus. Do we make a motion to remove that?
No, so you don't need a, sorry. So we don't need a motion. So what we'll do is if there aren't any other items, move the consent agenda minus that one item, and then we will address that item during the action items, and it could be either at the beginning or the end or wherever is deemed most convenient.
And I think also in addition, Luis, did you want 8.26?
The 8.26, I just wanted a clarification or more the update in reference to what's there, reference to the foundation. As I read it, is it at 600,000 per year, or is it 600,000 for the 3 years?
That's for per year.
Per year? I want to pull it for discussion. I did read it and as it is said in reference to the board docs, there's the amount for 2022, we have a 13.65, and I saw that the foundation provided $350,000 in scholarship, but that's one of the questions that I had, but we can do that on the discussion. Thank you.
Chairwoman Ripley, I just have a clarifying point. So I actually have a procedural question. Mr. Sylvan, I mean, we have an active motion that's already moved to approve the consent agenda, and there was a second. And then after that came these requests to pull items.
So in fairness, Ms. Garcia had asked me about that before that discussion started. So sort of in the interest of having everyone's interests addressed.
So do we need to amend? So, I mean, do I, as motion maker, need to make an amendment to the motion?
So typically you don't need to have motions to pull items from the consent agenda. I mean, if you think it would help to clarify what exactly the board is voting on, we certainly can take that opportunity.
At this time, we had a motion and a second. So do we open it up for discussion first and then take the vote? So we might be able to clarify those 2 points more.
So
is that the procedure?
Well, so to clarify, there's no discussion on a motion to approve the consent agenda. 2 board members have asked for 2 items to be moved from the consent agenda. Mr. Klinko's raised a question about the timing of that, although like I said, in sort of my explanation for that is in fairness, Ms. Garcia asked me about that right before we went to that. So my suggestion.
Okay, so I'll just make it easier. I would amend my motion to approve the consent agenda with the withdrawal of the 2 items to be considered separately.
Do I hear a second?
Well, is it okay with the seconder? The amendment?
Yes,
I believe is
that's just fine. That's fine.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the removal of items 8.26 and 8.32. Mr. Sylvan, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
I'm happy to do that. We don't need to do a roll call vote, but I'm happy to do that for this item if you'd like.
I think it was one of the suggestions since we are on Zoom and it makes it more clear who's voting for what.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. I just wanted to raise that because for the tax and the budget issue, that's actually required that we do a roll call vote. This is not, but for clarity's sake, I'm perfectly,
Understood.
it's perfectly appropriate. Mr. Garcia, sorry.
Sorry.
I need to slow down. Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Garcia,
Yes.
Dr. Hay,
Yes.
Mr. Klinko,
Yes.
Ms. Ripley.
Yes. The motion passes unanimously, so we will discuss the two extracted items at a future date.
So to clarify, we would discuss those items as part of the next section of the agenda action items. So typically we either take those at the very beginning or we could take them as the last items in that section. So you could either do it before 9.1 or after 9.3.
Got it. Let's do it in the beginning if you have, unless anyone objects, since it's fresh in our minds. So the next item on our agenda are the action items. So action item number 1, discussion on consent agenda item 8.26, Pima Community College Foundation Services Agreement. Do I hear a motion to pass this action item first of all?
I would move the recommendation as printed in the agenda.
Second.
Okay, and now I open this up for discussion. So Board Member Garcia, 8.26, Board Member Gonzalez, you had questions on this, on 8.6. Would you like to begin the discussion or ask questions of the staff, of our staff?
Sorry, you have to push the button first.
As I mentioned, clarify and correct me if it's correct or not, but the foundation is separate from Pima Community College, correct?
Yeah, so the foundation is a separate Arizona not-for-profit corporation.
Okay. As I read the board docs, I did read, as I mentioned, right now up to the 2022, we have the amount of 3.65 million. And my question was, I saw that also the foundation provided 350,000 in scholarship to our students. Is that on a yearly basis? The scholarships.
So I can,
Can I interrupt? Because this has been a topic that I've been discussing and researching a lot, and got a nice quick overview from the Chancellor. Chancellor, can you please just give us a quick overview on what those costs are and where those monies go to? Thank you.
Yes, so Chair Ripley and Board Member Gonzalez, I'll do my best to outline the broad sketches. I also have Marcy Euler, the president of the foundation, with us tonight, and she'd be glad to kind of delve a little bit deeper. So as noted in the report here, the foundation has grown its assets by twofold since 2018. And as you've seen, we've brought in significant dollars over the last few years, some of which goes to scholarships. So I think that's an important part of this, is to understand that not all of it goes to scholarships, but some of it, much of it does go to scholarships. And that fluctuates from year to year, depending on performance of the funds and how the funds are designated. Some funds are designated in endowments, and then depending on how much is generated in those endowments, how much are available for scholarships. Others are just direct gifts for scholarships. Again, it's just going to vary. I think hopefully that answers your question, Board Member Gonzalez, that number is going to vary. I don't know, Marcy, if you want to add to that.
Yes, thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Chair Ripley, members of the Board of Governors, guests. The foundation, we manage assets that are both permanently restricted and temporarily restricted. So that $14 million is more than just our endowments. Our endowments we spent this year at approximately the 3% level. And so while we have approximately $7 million in permanently endowed funds, we cannot spend that amount of money. The program funds and other scholarships that we have the privilege of spending down to zero. Those are things that the college requests from us. And when those are requested from us, we will pay those funds out to a vendor, to the college itself, based on what the request and that the use and purpose is allowable under our guidelines.
Board Member Ripley, you are not.
I'm muted. I'm just babbling. Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Chancellor, for that. I think from a board member's perspective, when I was researching the foundation months ago and got to know the members of the foundation, it helps to know at the bigger picture as they bring in literally millions of dollars to this school, and without which I don't know how we would have gotten even through COVID. It's literally, you can see the numbers, they're available. The $600,000, is it $600,000 amount that you see here in the contract, those are operating funds. So again, like what Marcy said, all of the millions of dollars that they bring in go to us. So it's a nonprofit. So it's to keep them operating, and it's a fraction of what the amount is that they actually bring into the school. So when you look at it in that aspect, the foundation is vital to our operations and for in fact our existence in many cases of crisis. So I don't know if that helps any board member Gonzalez, or if you have any other questions.
Not really, but I just wanted to make a comment as the clarification reference to the $600,000 per year that the Pima College provides. I think it's great, but what I want to see, or what I don't know, we can. I saw the Chancellor Lambert elaborate in reference to the foundation, but the check and balance, if we're providing $600,000 and we're only providing $350,000 in scholarship, I think with the abundance that we have, I think maybe we should increase that, because the need is out there for all students. I think we really want to support in reference to student success. I think maybe we should increase that, and we can look at that as well too. But I think it's I saw the contributions from our private donors. I think it's great, but also I think it's great that we provide part of that share to the students in reference to student support. Thank you.
Marcy, did you want to respond to that? I think there's a little bit of miscommunication there.
Yeah, I think Damien has his hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Board Member Klinko, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Ripley. I just want to first acknowledge the board, the foundation and the foundation board for a really tremendous job. A number of years ago, a plan was brought to the board about how we could make strategic investments into the foundation to help realign and redefine and grow their capacity. And what we saw and what we have seen is significant gifts. I just want to note the extraordinary generosity of the Brown Family Foundation and the work that the Chancellor and the foundation did to secure that $2.5 million gift. Additionally, the Connie Hillman Challenge Grant Match Fund, which is a 2-to-1 match for $5 million, which will result in a $15 million gain to the college. All of this work is really, again, because of the strategic investment that we've made into the foundation and the foundation's realignment with the mission priorities of the college. So, part of the reality is that different funds are given in different ways. So the money given from the Brown Family Foundation goes to programming, where restricted funds that are in our endowment can be given for specific type of scholarships, but it is restricted based on stewardship of those dollars as a endowment. So we can't spend down the endowment because only a small percentage of the earned income from that money is able to go to those investments. But as we grow it over time, we will be able to make larger and larger grants to students for scholarships. And I think that that's really the key part to remember, that ultimately this investment is helping the foundation serve the mission of the institution by providing external resources in a way that we hadn't had as really recently as 5 years ago in this robust way. So I just want to really acknowledge the incredible work of Ms. Euler and her remarkable board who are pounding the pavement and working so hard, and her tireless staff who really work so hard to make that possible.
Thank you, Board Member Klinko. Sorry, Marcy, did you have something else to add to that?
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We do work very hard on behalf of the college and the students and the different departments. What was just explained is kind of that key piece. We are bound by what the donor gives us the money for. And so therefore, we can't just change how much we give or who we give to. We have to follow the donor instruction. And so while we manage resources that are large, we have to do it based on what the donor expectation is. And so we take that responsibility very seriously. The $350,000 in scholarships is a portion of what we have spent, because we have spent a large sum in other programmatic areas that support applied technology and hospitality and athletics and academic programs, the Aztec Resource Center, student emergency funds. All of these things that are not considered scholarship dollars are also part of our spending. We are considered a component unit of the college for the audit that is done annually. And so you will see what the college does and what the foundation does in terms of the big audit that Pima Community College puts through. And we will continue, pardon me, to have that transparency.
Take a minute, Marcy. I think she needs to get a drink of water. But yeah. So with that said, and I always beat this drum, but you know, community colleges have three sources of funding, and that's property taxes, state funding, and tuition. And in our case, we get zero state funding, and we all know the reasons for that. So without the foundation, we would have to make some very, very serious decisions in cutbacks. So any other discussion on this action item before we go to vote, or any questions? Mr. Gonzalez, did that answer some of your questions?
Yes, I got the clarification that I needed. I think it's good. Like I mentioned, I just needed clarification in reference to what was there. I saw the both extremes, but I think, as I mentioned, I know there's a lot of sums that were expended, but I think, no, I got the information that I needed. I'll leave it for the next time.
Okay, great. And again, we're very grateful for the foundation. So at this point in time, I would like to call for a roll call vote, because we are in this hybrid situation on this action item. Mr. Sylvan, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Klinko?
Yes.
Ms. Ripley?
Yes. With that, the motion passes. Thank you very much, or the action item passes. Next action item, back to 8.32, delegating authority to execute a contract for construction manager at risk, construction services for development of the downtown campus hotel properties. Do I hear a motion to pass this action item?
So moved.
No, we're going to have a discussion.
We are.
Second.
Second, it's been
Second.
moved. Thank you. We have a motion and we have a second, and now I open it up to discussion. So any discussion or questions?
Okay, Chairperson
Yes, Board
Ripley.
Member Garcia.
Chairperson Ripley, my question on this is, okay, so on this item here, we're authorizing to go ahead with a contract. It says manager at risk construction, but in reality, is this to go ahead and proceed with constructing of the facilities or repurposing the hotels? Because originally, we were going to get somebody to come in and do some kind of an assessment from the last meeting that we had. Am I wrong?
I would turn to Chancellor. Can you answer this?
So Board Member Ripley and Chancellor, I'm sorry, Board Member Garcia. I have with us Brandy, who will be glad to answer that question for you, Board Member Garcia. Go ahead, Brandy.
Hi, Chair Ripley and board members. Hello, Chancellor Lambert. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to answer this question. So last month, we approved the ability to negotiate an agreement with the architect who will be working with us on the programming of this hotel property. And in the process of that programming, what we'd like to do and what we're proposing with this agreement is to also engage a construction manager at risk who will participate with us in a pre-construction services portion of their agreement, which will allow us to have another member of our construction community collaborate with us on this project, so that we have the perspective of somebody who is a builder, understands estimates, understands procurement issues that are ongoing right now, those kinds of things, gives us that insight as we develop our programming, our schedule, and our budget. So this contract is asking for that collaboration.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you so much, but the other part is that it says that the total costs are not are expected to exceed 10,000, is that 10,500,000?
The costs in the contract that are identified have not been negotiated yet. However, it's a cost that represents a range that could occur for this project. And again, until we do the programming, we won't have the exact number for, that's kind of a template contract that we put out there so that the construction managers at risk could have a fair understanding of what the range of this project might entail. However, until this project is negotiated, we won't have an exact number there. You see a number that just gives us an idea of what it might do. But without the programming and without this initial pre-construction stage, we don't have that full understanding yet.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? With the motion and second and discussion, Mr. Sylvan, would you please take a roll call vote on this action item?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Gonzalez?
Let me say something before my vote. The properties that we're looking at were pretty much condemned by the city of Tucson. There were 3 properties in that same situation. My question that just want to share with the public is how many millions of dollars now? We're looking at 10.5 before me will be required to renovate these motels. This was not on the PCC most recent educational master plans, yet it appears to continue in the preservation efforts of the taxpayers' expense. I will have to say no, as I mentioned before. I think it's not a good investment. I think the investment that we need is more student success for our students. And $3.5 million is only a starting point. I have no idea how much it's going to raise or how much more we're going to be expend. Telling the public, I don't think it's a good investment. Invest in our students. Thank you. Vote is no, yes.
Ms. Garcia,
No.
Dr. Hay,
Yes.
Mr. Klinko,
Yes.
Ms. Ripley.
Yes. The motion passes. I couldn't really hear the first vote. It was a yes or a no.
The first vote by Mr. Gonzalez was no.
Okay, so the vote passes 3-2. Next,
And a point of order, Chair Ripley, it would,
Yes.
if you could please ask the members of the board to engage, if they're going to have a substantive conversation, I think in the discussion period would be a better time to do that so we can create a response and a communication. I think it's a little difficult to have meaningful conversation when when that opportunity isn't taken.
Thank you for that point of order. Actually, it is, and in all fairness to everybody on the board, the place to have the discussions and comments is in the discussion period. Once we are at the vote, we should just merely be voting. So the discussion needs to happen during the discussion period. If you could please observe that in respect for the other board members, that would be great going forward as we go through these next final 3 action items. Thank you. The next action item is 9.1, Adjunct Faculty Tier System. Chancellor, would you like to comment?
Madam Chair, do
Yes,
you want to call
we're-
for a motion first? Usually we do a motion second and then presentation
Sorry,
and discussion.
Speed this up, man. Okay, trying to speed it all up. So do I hear a motion to pass action item 9.1, Adjunct Faculty Tier System?
Point of order, could just for clarification, could our legal counsel just read the recommendation for the record?
Yes, please. Thank you.
The Chancellor, so item 9.1, Adjunct Faculty Tier System. The Chancellor recommends the governing board authorize the Chancellor or designee to create and implement an Adjunct Faculty Tier System. The details are in the board report.
Thank you for that description. Do I hear a motion to pass action item 9.1?
So moved.
Second.
With the movement of the move in second, I open it now to discussion. Any discussion by board members? Or I would like to actually, before we have discussion, if you can provide a brief description and description, basically, Chancellor Lambert, of what this actually means.
So, Madam Chair, thank you, and we're very pleased that we've been able to sit down with our adjunct faculty leadership and work out a more fair and equitable compensation system for a group of individuals who give a lot of their time and effort at little compensation to do almost half of what we do for our students in terms of the teaching and learning components of the college. So I'm pleased that we've gotten this far. I'll ask Dr. Dave B to provide more of the technical pieces since he was more involved in developing the tiered system. So Dave?
Good evening again, Chairperson Ripley, members of the board, colleagues and guests. As Lee just mentioned, we've been working on this kind of a structure for some time to recognize the value of our adjunct faculty employees. And in the course of the last year or so in particular, the conversation has been going on for longer than a year, but in earnest, we've been working with representatives from the adjunct faculty group on developing a program that would recognize adjunct faculty who have been with the college for some period of time and have taught a certain number of classes. And so what we've structured is a program where there will be 2 tiers of faculty. There will be faculty who are relatively new to the college, working and teaching the courses at one adjunct faculty load rate, and then those who qualify for the second criteria would be working at a higher rate of pay. Those rates are part of the compensation proposal that's a little bit later, but just to give some context right now, adjunct faculty, no matter how experienced they are at the college, are making $870 per credit hour. The recommendation is to lift them to the base tier 1 will be lifted 3.4% to $900 per credit hour. And then those who qualify for tier 2 would get another 5% on top of that, so $945. The criteria that were identified to differentiate between tier 1 and tier 2 faculty is essentially that faculty who have taught 5 terms or 30 credit hours in the last 3 years and have completed 9 hours of particular college-directed professional development training. So these are faculty who have gone through certain training and we're confident that they're experienced in teaching classes for the college, and it recognizes that value to the college. That's essentially what the structure is.
Thank you for that. Now I open it up for discussion or questions by our board members. I would like to make a comment then. I think that Sean Mendoza has been doing a fabulous job representing the adjunct professors, adjunct faculty. Arguably, the American Federation of Teachers president recently in the last couple of months actually said adjunct professors are the backbone of community colleges. And indeed, we couldn't do what we do without these adjunct professors, and they're pretty phenomenal. So I, for one, think anything that we can do to help out, I would definitely be in favor of this this action item. So any other discussion points? I think I saw, yes, Chair, Board Member Klinko.
Thank you very much, Chair Ripley. I just want to, really first thank all of the adjunct faculty who work so hard year in, year out to produce just such a high quality educational offering for our community. And I want to really thank Dr. B and his team and Chancellor Lambert. This is something that I've been talking about and wanting to see happen for the last 5 years. And so I'm really glad that as part of this sort of reevaluation and class comp study that we were able to include this. I think it's important. Frankly, I wish we were doing more, but I think it's a good start. And I'm really glad to support this.
Thank you so much. And I might add, Sean Mendoza and his crew have been, very amazing spokespeople and doing so humbly and with great grace. They've been very gracious. So with that said, any other comments? If not, I would like to open this up for the roll call vote. Mr. Sylvan, can you take a roll call vote on this motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd be glad to. Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Klinko?
Yes.
Ms. Ripley?
Yes. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously, and we will go on to the next item, compensation and classification recommendations and new compensation structure. Mr. Sylvan, can you please read the full description of this action item?
So item 9.2 is the compensation and classification recommendations. The Chancellor recommends the governing board accept the recommendations of the classification and compensation study and implement a new compensation structure for salary administration.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to pass this action item 9.2?
Second.
Moved and seconded. I now open this up actually for further, I think there needs to be some further description and discussion by the Chancellor on exactly and precisely what the comp and class study provided for us.
Yes, Board Member Ripley, Chair Ripley, thank you. Again, I'm just so excited that we finally been able to get to this point. As you know, we were faced with some strong headwinds around our financials, really placed us in a difficult position to be able to do more for our employees. But as things started to turn a little more favorable, it timed nicely with us being able to launch a class comp study to bring a market, very objective, more reasonable basis for how we compensate our employees for the great work they do going forward. So I'm pleased to have Dr. B talk about this. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge on the earlier item that the provost and her team also played a very critical role in helping to advance the faculty tier piece. So Dolores and team, thank you. Dave, turn it over to you. Oh, Dave, turning over to you.
Yeah, no, I'm just sorry.
Okay.
I'm in the process of trying to get my screen up. So thanks again, and it is again my pleasure to speak with the board tonight related to the class comp and budget and all things financial and so forth related to fiscal year 2023. We've provided the board in the board packet and with the attached agenda items a significant amount of information. I'll go through a fair amount of it today, but a bunch of that information is really more for just to get the context and some of the details that we don't need to really talk through here, but just to give some context about some of the details that are actually involved in this project. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the purpose of our compensation structure, or any organizational compensation structure, is really to ensure that employees are properly paid for the value they provide to the organization. There's an important part for us, which is that we want to be able to recruit and retain the talent that we need to do the work of the college. And so what we did is undertook a study that is to create structures that are aligned to market-based pay to ensure that we are paying people appropriately. The second piece to it is recognizing the value that in the individual employees provide to the college. Anyone who's listened to me in the steering committees, I often use the reference point of day one, when you work for the college, you walk in the door and you aren't even sure where your office is, or you have keys, that sort of thing. And increasingly from day one throughout the tenure at the college, there's an increasing knowledge base and experience base with how to perform the duties required in your job. And we want to be able to recognize that value to the college. And then lastly, we want structures that ensure fair and equitable pay. I've talked with the board a couple of times in the recent past about the way that the current structure is set up, how some of the adjustments happen, but I want to focus more on what we're proposing and going forward. So ultimately, this is about solving a pretty big problem at the college. The current structure is about 22 years old. As you can imagine, in the last 22 years, positions have changed, job duties have changed. Obviously, technology is the key component to many jobs, and that has an effect on the college's compensation structure. The jobs and schedules that we have not been routinely, as a whole, adjusted to the market. They've been adjusted for COLA type adjustments, where the scales have been lifted and some things have happened in terms of how the old structure was set up. But over time, the effectiveness of the schedule and the way that the system works has degraded. One of the consequences of that is that there is salary inversion can happen, where in order to hire somebody to do a job, we hire them in at a higher rate of pay than what some of the current employees might be making. As you can imagine, that isn't a great practice. So we're looking at a structure that's going to help with that problem. And then moving down the list a little bit more on some of the other problems. In the last 10 years, as I alluded to, the resource limitations of the college have really put a constraint on what the college can do in terms of compensation. So we've been limited in terms of what our salary pool increases can be. We've had the suspension of the step progression program that existed previously. And as a result, there's salary compression. I'm going to show you the chart, and I've shown the board this chart before, but I think that this summarizes the problems almost in a nutshell in one slide. And then lastly, that there's been it's been limited in terms of how able we have been to recognize the value that individual employees contribute to the college. And the board has also mentioned an interest in having performance-based pay adjustments and recognition of high-performing employees in particular, and having the ability to do that. So we're folding that in, and we're going to have I'll mention that a little bit later on. To summarize, again, this is the chart that to me summarizes a majority of our problems all in one chart. So what this shows is our current structure, which is a step-based structure, with step one being on the far left-hand column being the minimum of a grade that someone is hired at and paid at. And as you can see, we have a huge compression problem, particularly non-exempt employees. 65% of our non-exempt employees are currently at the minimum of their grade. 45% of our exempt employees are at the minimum of their grade. Similarly, a high number of administrators are at the minimum of the grade. That is regardless of how many years of experience they have. So that's what is called compression. Faculty also have compression. For faculty, it's at step 6, and that's because faculty can be hired up to step 6. And then we have a process by which faculty, when they get years of experience at the college, in order to avoid inversion for faculty positions, in order to avoid that for faculty positions, we have a process by which they can move up to step 6 at this point. So they have a compression cluster at step 6. Our staff employees are clustered at step 1. That summarizes the biggest part of the problem with the current structure. So as you know, we've been working on this for about 2 years now. The college hired an expert firm, a nationally recognized firm that works with higher education and other organizations in salary structures and schedules, brought them in to conduct work with the college to review our processes, to review our positions, to conduct a survey where people identify what job duties they do. And then that firm worked to help classify positions, create structures where there are job categories that make more sense for what the college's needs are going forward, and then recommended salary scales to come out of that. And one of the things that is important in that is setting up a structure, and I'll talk about the staff side. So talking about the staff, I just was talking about that. So they've identified 255 different job descriptions with specific duties and responsibilities. There's 25 job families, 11 job levels. Again, in the later part of the presentation, there's additional information that sort of shows what that looks like for some specific examples. It consolidated for staff and administrator positions into one salary table with 12 grades. You'll see when I show you what the current structures look like and the proposed structures look like, visually even they make more sense. This is a broader band structure, so it consolidates the number of grades that we have, but it's a broader range of pay within those grades. One thing that we're particularly proud of within this is that the minimum wage, so our starting regular position moves up to $16.15 for our regular staff positions. And that's over right now. We have this, currently it's $15 is the starting point for regular staff positions. So this moves that up pretty significantly. Here's what the current staff structure looks like. As I mentioned, there are a lot of different grades between non-exempt, exempt, and then administrator positions. And you can see that they aren't linear and that they're pretty small. Now, this next slide is actually to the same scale, but shows just how much more they're broad banded, right? And that they have more of a consistent structure to them with the changes between the different grades. Importantly, and what the line means in these is that each of these grades is aligned to the market median for these positions. So again, what they did is they identified jobs. Siegel identified the jobs and based on the duties performed, and then identified jobs that are consistent with those that are out in the market, and then tied those to market comparisons, and then set up these grade scales. So these grade scales are based on market medians for parallel type jobs. Sometimes those jobs are national, like administrator jobs would be based on more of a national sample. Locally, or if the job is either local or has a more competitive base in terms of like information technology, jobs exist in lots of different fields. So then the market comparisons are a little bit broader in range with types of institutions that might be used as comparisons. So these midpoints are basically set to market median. Those over time, what we'll do is we'll look at those salary surveys on an annual basis. Certainly to start with, we'll look at those on an annual basis and make adjustments to those, because those will reflect changes that happen in the market. And with a new structure, we want to do that more routinely. Sometimes an organization might do it every two or 3 years, but initially we want to look at that information pretty regularly, particularly because inflation right now is probably going to have an impact on wages, and we'll want to make sure that we're keeping pace with wage changes that happen in the market. This information is just detail in terms of what the ranges are. So these next two slides show sort of what the proposed structure is What we did then is, so we take that new grade structure and then we say, okay, how long does it take to implement this? As I've talked with the board, it is in the college's interests, from my perspective, to get as far into the new schedule as possible. People don't want to hear that their market comparisons indicate that they should be making, say, $60,000, and we're saying, yeah, but we're going to pay you 50. So the idea was put as much as we can into trying to make this as fair as possible, and we've done a really good job of placing people well into the schedules. And you can see it here. So this again is that same information that I showed you. It shows that it's consolidated the information. The number of staff and administrator positions, this is the number of positions, the other one was percentages. So this is the number of positions that are step one. Again, it shows you the compression problem. And then it shows you how they're spread out across the different steps right now. Here's what the recommended placement is. Again, this is based on the new job schedules and then the amount of the years of experience the individuals have in the jobs at Pima College, and then placing them up according to that kind of a logic, and then capping the placement at the third quartile mark. So the 75, so remember that the scales that had the 50% mark, so halfway between that and the max is what we're talking about as being the cap point. That's important to set that cap so that people both have the ability to grow up in above that level, but also that gives us the ability to implement pay for performance for folks who then in this particular case would be making well above the market median for their positions. So it places people well into the schedules based on their experience in their job and gives them some ability to grow, and obviously spreads out the compression a great deal. Obviously, we still have a compression problem, and it's going to be, you'll see this also with the faculty, that with a number of our employees have had a number of years of experience in their positions, and that's what leads to the compression when we put the cap on to do the implementation. Okay, so let's quickly shoot over to the faculty. So the recommendation with the faculty to the steering committee, Siegel came back and recommended two potential different structures, one of which was step-based, more aligned with what it looks like right now, but it had differences in it. And then the second one was more like what we just talked about with the staff, which is quartile-based broadband structures. Talking and working with the faculty steering committee, we shifted towards focusing on a structure that's similar to what we have now, but enables the faculty to grow. So the initial proposal had a number of faculty would have been placed at the absolute max point of the initial schedule based on the market comparisons. So what we did is we modified it with Siegel and with the steering committee's feedback, modified it to create a structure that has 20 steps, so that our faculty will have some growth potential, but that the step placements and how it's structured in terms of hiring people in with some experience teaching experience prior to Pima, we can then still place them. And in fact, one of the recommendations was to move that step placement up from what is currently step 6 up to as high as step 8. And so let's take a look at what that looks like. So this is what the current structure looks like for faculty. These grades are based on their educational attainment. And so that is going to continue, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the recommendations going forward. But it sets, the new schedule is a little bit different, where it sets it up, instead of being 15 steps, it's going to move up to 20 steps. In order to do that, you can see we placed in the comparison to the staff positions, these little red dots indicate where the market median is for this. So by adding the steps, and because our faculty are so senior in their positions at the college, what we're saying is that the faculty structure is set up a little bit higher than the market median, indicating that we're paying a little bit higher than the market average. And that there's still growth for faculty above where their max points are going to be. There's a little bit of a difference in terms of how people are set in their grades. One of the most common complaints about the current structure is that occupational faculty are basically stuck at the lowest grade level because the educational attainment is very focused not on occupational fields and qualifications and certifications that they may get in their areas of expertise, but it's focused on educational attainment. So master's degree plus 15 credit hours, master's degree plus 30 credit hours. So what this new structure actually enables bachelor's folks with a bachelor's degree plus 30 credit hours to be placed in the second highest grade rather than the lowest. They would be located in this S grade right now. So it gives some grade growth, and you can see that that actually has a pretty big difference. So a number of faculty will move from the lowest grade level to the second lowest grade level. That's going to address partly some of the concerns we have out of the occupational area. And then placing them with their years of experience as their initial placement at the college plus the years of experience. The blue section here indicates where folks are right now. So this is the current structure. Again, you can see all the compression is at step 6. Moving them into the new schedule based on their initial placement plus their years of experience moves them along that line. And then, of course, we have that compression problem that I talked about at step 12. That still gives folks a great deal of growth potential. And there's significant increases because, as you can imagine, most people are moving from this point to this point. And so it is a big investment for both the staff and the faculty. 60% of the positions at the college will receive adjustments when they're placed on the new schedules. That's a little bit more for faculty than staff. Partly that's related to how many vacant positions are in those areas. And then the placement costs are fairly proportional in terms of what the total allocation is for salaries. $1.4 million will go to the faculty to place them up into the schedule, $3.9 million to the staff and administrators to place them up into the schedule. And then what we've been talking about with the board is that on top of that, for the individuals who aren't scheduled to get an increase based on these market adjustments, because of recognizing the pressures of inflation and so forth, is having a minimum increase. So what we're recommending is that placing people in their schedules, and then folks, regular employees, would get a minimum increase of $2,000 if it's not already covered in that increase to the schedule. So if someone was slotted to get $2,500 above the current level, and I'm gonna clarify that because people are going to be listening to every word I say right now. So $2,500 if the new placement on the schedule indicates that they would get $2,500, they would get $2,500. If someone's new placement indicated they got $1,500, then the minimum would kick in and they would get $2,000. Now, what I wanted to make sure I was really clear about is right now there's a base, the college is paying in the current year base salary plus $1,000 for every individual. And so when I say it's plus 2,000, it's including, so it's base pay plus the $1,000, then it would be plus $2,000. Okay, just to be really crystal clear so that folks know what we're talking about. Anyway, that fits within the total then ends up being, and we have that in the compensation adjustment with the fringe benefits and having some contingency for adjustments that may need to happen after the fact. It fits into that, how much we have reserved in the budget. It's important, and I mentioned a couple of these things as we were going, is that this is going to be a work in process. It's taken us 2 years of work to get to this point. We're going to continue to refine the structure to meet the college's needs. Some of the things that are going to be critical is that once we identify where people are placed in the schedules, we have a good idea where they're at. Once this gets approved, we'll be communicating with the individual employees in terms of where their jobs have been placed and the years of experience. And we're going to have a process in place for them to review that if they aren't clear on what that process or they don't think that it was accurate. We'll have a review process for those people. That's why it's important to have some contingency in case there's an additional cost associated with it. And then with the steering groups, we have some additional work that we want to do. One of them is to identify possible alternative qualifications to educational attainment. So I mentioned in faculty that it's based on traditional measures. for occupational faculty, there are certain certifications that are important for their field growth and for them being able to teach effectively, teach their students effectively. And what we want to do is have a group work on identifying different qualifications that might also satisfy those same kinds of measures. So there'll be things that are equivalent in terms of the amount of effort to, like, say, 30 additional credit hours. So it's not like some, you take a class, an online class for an hour over the weekend, and that would qualify you for a significant pay increase. No, these would be significant investments in educational attainment of a different type. So that's one of the things that we want to work on. We want to work on performance-based structures. I mentioned that we have a max placement cap put in place, and with the steering groups, we've been talking with them about, well, you wouldn't get this annual increase, remember, because I'm talking about this sort of places you along your years of experience, that if you're on a performance plan, you would not be set up to move on that. And the structures are set up where there can be adjustments placed versus those base placements that could be based on your performance, but we need to work with employees to identify whether it's individual performance or whether it's group or college-based attainment of objectives, things like that, so that we could have performance-based pay be a part of this structure. So the structure can handle it. There just needs to be more conversation and more understanding about what kind of objective measures will be put in place and the criteria associated with that. And then another area that we need to work on is there are certain hard to fill areas in faculty positions, and actually in staff there are as well, that we might need to have some kind of a premium structure put in place. Right now, we only have one field that qualifies for this, which is nursing. But we want to have some conversation about how we would identify additional fields that that we know that market-based pay isn't, that the current structure wouldn't be sufficient to be able to recruit faculty or staff positions in certain hard to fill areas. And so we need to continue, that's a continuous effort that we're going to need to do in the coming year. To both identify some of the criteria and how that would qualify, but also to put some things in place to do that. And then lastly, executive compensation was not included in this, so that the high level administrator positions in this structure are at this point set, not because there weren't indications that there should be market-based adjustments for those positions, and it's that the priority at this point was staff and faculty, and that the additional review on the executive compensation needs to go forward. So right now, the executive compensation is set at that minimum amount, that $2,000 for each of those regular employees. But that's something that it is important for us to think of all of our employees in terms of being able to effectively recruit and retain our talent, and that is true of our administrators as well. One additional component that I want to add to this that's come up recently as we're working on this, as you might imagine, if the board approves this, it is a lot of work to get all of these individual positions, their new notifications of positions, and to get this set up in terms of paying them for the next fiscal year. So the one thing that I would ask the board to consider is to have this effective for the first full pay period of the fiscal year. So there's the pay periods right now, and the end of the one pay period is July 1st. The next pay period starts July 2nd. That is only 1 day of effective pay for individuals, but in terms of implementations, from a system standpoint, it's 2 extra weeks. And we can also make sure that it doesn't impact anyone's fiscal pay based on what we're calculating. We just want to make sure that we don't rush ourselves into getting this to happen where it will only affect 1 day in the one pay period. We'd rather get it completely correct and have it effective that first pay period that starts July 2nd. Again, that's more of a logistics issue, but I want to throw that out there and make sure the board is okay with doing that. Again, we can make sure that the whole fiscal pay is accurate with an adjustment for that 1 day of difference, but it makes a big difference in terms of getting all of these changes in place to effectively pay people correctly. Okay, I think I finished up all of my information there, or a boatload of information. Again, there's additional information And I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have on the compensation recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. B, for that a very extensive description. We've been waiting with bated breath for quite a long time for this. So I open this up for discussion to the board. Can we go to full screen? I can't see the hands. There we go. Any discussion or questions from the board? Without any, I just would like to, go ahead, Board Member Klinko. You're muted, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman Ripley. I think that we should probably amend the motion with a few additional modifications based on Dr. B's presentation, specifically the issue of we want to just clarify and underscore that the board supports the development of a performance pay model, that high demand fields be defined and be adjusted to make sure that we can continue to retain the best in class instructors in those specific fields. And I think we would want that to come back to the board at some point for at least sort of a presentation or review. I understand the urgency of getting that implemented, but I think it would be important to at least come back and articulate that to us. I think we would also want to see an administrator compensation study completed and adjustments made in that area as well. So we're doing universally the entire institution, and we're not just cherry picking certain classifications. And finally, that it would be retroactive to July 2nd and the full pay period of the year per Dr. B's request.
I agree with those amendments.
Thank you. And is it July 2nd or July 1st?
What we'd be looking to do is implement this as of July 2nd.
July 2nd. Okay, got it.
But
Okay, so
just so for clarification, it would be to the fiscal, so it'd be to the full
for the fiscal year
pay period. So just to clarify that it would be inconsistent with that proposal.
Okay, so the motion has been amended to include the implementation on July 2nd, incorporating the adjustments for the hard to fill positions, and also for the implementation of performance-based pay. So
and the class comp study for the administration.
Yes, thank you. I actually do agree with that. I think that there needs to be now at this point, I think we can go forward and do a class comp for the administrator position as well. I know this has been a long time coming, and it's taken a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get here. But I also want to reassure everyone that the implementation of this, like Dr. B said, is going to be tweaked as we go. So it's the implementation. There's probably going to be some bumps on the road, but I think overarching, this is a really good plan. And as far as fairness and justification, and I love that you use the word in the very beginning, really honoring the value of our staff and faculty and administrators, the value that they provide to our school. And this is really important. It's been a long time, but we're here now. So not looking back, let's move forward. And again, we do need to tweak the implementation of it. There's a lot of questions surrounding the placement caps, for instance. There's a lot of questions, involving, the length of time, the longevity, all of that, and performance-based studies. So and what I would like to add, I've shared this with the board in the past, is that the importance of performance-based salaries and performance-based promotions is keeping the supervisors, whether they're staff, faculty, or administrators, held accountable to make it as objective as possible. And you implement that and you incorporate that into the data and perhaps even a point system when you are implementing the performance-based studies and the whatever it's a annual or twice a year review. The people that are actually writing those performance reports need to also be held accountable for that. It's really important. Thank you so much. Dr. B, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just one point of clarification. When I said executive administrators, the lower level administrators are going to get adjustments. So deans, executive directors are included in this. It's the positions above those that are the ones that need additional work.
And I wanted to ask a question actually too, and because in one of our study sessions, you inferred that, I don't know if it was the average or if it was those that will be adjusted, it's going to be the ones that are going to be adjusted up will be approximately a 7% increase. Is that still correct?
That's on average across, yeah.
Across.
So it's those who are actually adjusted up, it's the average is actually higher. So what I'm saying is that 7% was the across the entire employee group. When you talk about those who are adjusted upwards, there are a number of folks who get quite a bit more than 7%, quite a bit more.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for all your hard work. And especially thank you to everybody involved in ensuring that we actually have the funds to be able to implement this, which is really extraordinary. And any other discussion or questions from the board before we vote? Okay, Mr. Sylvan, I would like to ask you to take a roll call vote for this action item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Garcia,
Yes.
Dr. Hay,
Yes.
Mr. Klinko,
Yes.
Ms. Ripley.
Yes, thank you very much, board. The motion and the action item passes unanimously. So we go to our last action item, 9.3, fiscal year 2023 employee salaries and wages. Mr. Sylvan, would you please read the description of this action item?
The Chancellor recommends the governing board approve employee salary and wage rates for fiscal year 2023, including placement for all regular employees according to the new compensation structure proposal, providing a minimum compensation increase of $2,000 over fiscal year 2022 salaries and wages for regular employees, and increasing the base adjunct faculty pay rate by 3.4% to $900 per load hour.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I would like to open up any other discussion that Chancellor might have concerning this action item.
Chair Ripley, I think Dr. B laid this out very nicely in his earlier presentation. So if there's any additional questions about the specifics related to this, we'd be glad to answer that. Otherwise, I don't know that we need to provide any additional overview.
Thank you so much. With that, I open it up to discussion by the board members.
I have a question. Okay.
Yes, Board Member Garcia.
Okay, so when it says all regular employees, is that including the executive team? For this increase?
In terms of the executive team, as we were just talking about, that they are not, the executive team is not structured, is not set up to be placed and get adjustments related to the scale. They are scheduled to get the minimum adjustment. So all regular employees would get the higher of where their placement is or $2,000.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion, board members? Without any further discussion, Mr. Sylvan, would you please conduct a roll call vote on this motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Garcia,
Yes.
Dr. Hay,
Yes.
Mr. Klinko,
Yes.
Ms. Ripley.
Yes. With that, this action item passes unanimously, and I would just like to lastly say thank you very much for everybody who's championed all these last three action items, particularly Provost Dolores Serra. Thank you so much for all you've done. Duran Serra for really being one of the champions. There's several, but thank you to you and your staff. This has been a long time coming, and I'm happy that we're here. Thank you. And next, I would like to go to item number 10 on the agenda. We will now go to public comment. We've got several public comment requests here. Let's just start at the top. First up is Mr. Richard Hernandez for public comment. Are you here online?
He's here in person.
In person, go ahead, please.
Buenas noches. I'm Richard. I was a coach here for about 35 years. I've worked with hundreds of students. I know the value of Pima Community College, especially in my neighborhood on the south side, predominantly minority, almost exclusively Hispanic. We know that this is our community college. But today, I'm here because I want to sound the alarm. It's really important to me that I sound the alarm to everybody. We have a crisis at Pima College. We really do. So what does that mean? In CV 1402515, Chancellor Lee Lambert was found guilty of violating the civil rights of Mr. Katz. In CV 1500260, Ms. or Mrs., I'm not sure which, Kuyagan was also found to be a victim of Lee Lambert in violation of her civil rights. Today we have a third one working its way through the federal system. It's Ward versus Lee Lambert in Pima College. All indications are that it looks like we're going to have a third victim. So it begs to ask this board and the community, teachers, faculty, staff, voters, taxpayers, what's the limit of victims that we're going to allow Lee Lambert to make? In my mind, the second one, he should have been fired. We're having a third. So let me ask Board Member Meredith, just as a narrative, not for response, is 4 okay with you? How about you, Kat? Is 5 victims when you'll finally say no more? How about you, Damien? 6? Actually, I'm going to take that back. My sense is you and the Chancellor enjoy a personal relationship. I doubt that there's a number. So now I'm speaking to the public. Do we value, do we support, do we advocate for victims, or do we encourage the perpetrator? A serious problem we have here at Pima College. The next issue I want to address is how the board majority addresses the board minority. In particular, I'm going to laser focus here on Damien. When you speak to Maria in the tone that you do, you're offensive. She's a woman, she's your senior, she's Latina. She was elected by the people, not appointed. In your first term to Pima County, to this college, you were appointed, need I recall. For Luis, a proud Yaqui, he doesn't engage you in verbal judo because that's not culturally okay. I will say one thing for you, Damien. You are a minority, you're a gay man. But so am I. You see this beautiful brown skin? I'm a Latino gay man. And I am calling you out as a gay man to say, stop the drama. Stop it. My last point today goes to you, Kat. At the last board meeting, you allowed a member of the audience to talk for 10 minutes without interruption. You are creating a dangerous precedence. You're creating a classification of if you're well-to-do, if you're prominent, if you have money, if you're a Republican, you get to address this board for 10 minutes. But if you're a minority like me on the South Side, a Hispanic, a gay man, we only get 3 minutes. My sense is you know that was wrong, and you should acknowledge that. We want to treat my maker, I hope your maker feels the same. We're all equal. We're all the same. That was wrong. I'm going to conclude today by asking the public, same question I'm asking the board, how many victims? How many more victims? Our neighbors, our friends, maybe you see them out eating or at a sporting event, or they go to your church. They're civil rights victims. How many victims will it take before you fire Lee Lambert? Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Next, we have number 3, Michaela Hayes. Michaela, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Ripley, Chancellor, board members, colleagues, and guests. I'm Michaela Hayes, math faculty, class and comp steering committee member, and PCC EA president. A large amount of work has been done on the class and comp study, but there are still a few significant questions and discussions to be had for these schedules to be ready to go July 1. One large concern is that faculty beyond the steering committee have not had a real opportunity to give input. Email updates have been surface level with no detail, and 2 information sessions in March contain very little specifics. The actual schedule and placement rules were shared with the faculty at large for the first time last Friday, after most faculty were off contract, with only a general invitation to email with questions. Several questions asked in the meeting were unable to be answered, and many faculty left confused and concerned about the actual impact and fairness of the new schedule. I personally have great concerns about the rules for placement of current faculty members that would lead to experience at Pima being valued less than experience outside of Pima in certain cases, what Dr. B described as salary inversion. I've been told this would be looked at, but as of last Friday, it was not yet fixed. In addition, a large number of faculty have been stuck at Step 6 on the old schedule. The proposed placement rules would have an even greater number of faculty compressed to the new Step 12. This means people who have worked at Pima for 10 years and those with 20 plus years will likely be on the same step with potentially the same pay. I say potentially because there are faculty who currently make more than this new placement rule would allow. The college has promised that faculty will receive a minimum of a $2,000 raise, which is great, until you consider the fact that they may have to wait 5 or 6 years for their placement on the salary schedule to catch up with their current salary. This means faculty who have been working faithfully for us the longest may end up going 13 or 14 years without a significant increase in their salaries. I worry this decision by the college will hurt morale and motivate some amazing faculty to move on because they don't feel valued by the college. The reason given for this step cap was to allow for budget constraints. We currently have faculty on 15 steps of our current schedule. If the placement cap on the new schedule was 15 rather than 12, that would alleviate some of the compression and allow for recognition of our longer-term faculty. I asked the board to prioritize money from that $9 million that isn't currently spent to raise the placement cap for faculty. Another missing piece is for those who don't fit on the schedule from tonight's packet. Nursing faculty are currently paid on a different salary table, as you heard. And as of right now, they don't know what their pay will look like in the new system. They know they'll have a stipend increase above the shared schedule, but they haven't been told what it is. Also, our 12-month faculty who would start receiving this pay on July 1st haven't seen what their pay will look like yet either. After the presentation last week by HR, I sent out a survey to faculty. Due to people being off contract and the short turnaround time, I only received 37 responses. However, of those 37 responses, only 17 answered that this schedule was acceptable, with several noting reservations and unanswered questions. 22 had concerns about whether the hiring range is going to be enough to attract new faculty to their area. Only 4 people, 4, felt that the placement of current faculty was fair. And 25 out of 37 said this new schedule does not communicate that Pima values faculty experience or loyalty, mainly due to the placement cap at Step 12. I'm asking you to delay implementation of the class and comp recommendations until the issues I outlined can be resolved, that the board ensure that the cap at Step 12 be reevaluated, that placement of current faculty members within the hiring range be recalculated, and that the nursing faculty and 12-month faculty adjustments would be shared out ASAP with all faculty. I look forward to working together to reach a resolution on these crucial items. And I just want to say, overall, I think it can be worked out. I'm just really concerned about the tight timeline.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to add, I think that there's a lot of concerns here and a lot to unpack. So I would really strongly recommend, Dr. B, that you get together and maybe address these concerns one by one. And again, the implementation of this, as we suggested, is still being tweaked. And I think there's room to have further dialogue. I think it's going to be really important for the Chancellor and Dr. B to talk to you, Michaela, so we can come up with a solution. Thank you. Next on our list here is Mr. James Hart. Mr. Hart, are you here? I'll give it a couple minutes. There's a lot of people here. I don't see your name. If not, we can circle back. We can go next to, it says here, Heaven Rendon is on the list, but it says that they just want to listen in. Heaven Rendon, did you want to speak, or are you just here for audience participation? Probably just for listening. I'll go to the next person, Armida McKenna. Armida McKenna?
I'm here.
Yes, okay, go ahead, you have the floor.
Okay, so now more than ever, we're all we call to the community to support board members Luis Gonzalez and Maria Garcia from Region 3 for their leadership, forward thinking, and rejection of the matters pending to the management of Pima Community College. Under the direction of Chancellor Lambert and his personal board members, we have been shielded from the circumstances that surround Pima Community College. We're on the verge of losing our community college due to the inability of the faculty to follow the demands of the course catalog and fulfill the obligations entrusted. Students are not able to take the courses necessary to obtain a 2-year certification to transfer to a university. Programs that are vital and significant to the community have been terminated, and the current 4-year program feeding into NAU are fictitiously leading our children nowhere. Pima Community College today cannot compete with the community demands based on researched and documented data. Primarily, the vulgar salary of Chancellor Lambert, his institutionalized ineffectiveness, his violation of employee civil rights, his questionable procurement deals, his entering of intergovernmental agreements without the full consent of the board, the continued rise of tuition, and his disrespectful actions towards the faculty and to minority board members. To these members, I apologize for not recognizing their efforts in supporting our community and the rights of the marginalized. We have been asleep and the invasion has been successful. It took a slap in the face from the Arizona Daily Star to open our eyes to the injustice of the elite populace who has not a child to educate within the community setting. They ask for applause to keep the momentum, to take over the opportunities of our children, to add to their continued wealth. In summary, on behalf of the unrepresented students, faculty, parents, grandparents, and community members who invest their funds so that the educational resources are available to their community, we demand that under the true leadership of all the governing board members, to direct Chancellor Lambert to honor our community college's real mission and to return to the community a vital mechanism that feeds our community. We value a community college, not a personal privatized institution that has been sold for profit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person on the list is Amber Smith. There's no notation, and I'm not sure if Amber Smith is here to speak or just to listen. Amber Smith? Okay, we can go to the next person, Lawrence Lucero.
Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm driving, so I'm having to pull over.
Oh, yes, Amber, go ahead.
My name is Amber Smith. Sorry, give me 15 seconds so I'm not a hazard here on the road. Okay. So as a citizen in this community, I too am a Latino woman. I'm Venezuelan, and I do have 3 children under the age of 14, all of which I hope have the privilege to be able to go to Pima Community College. I'm extremely concerned with some of the activities of members of this board. There's been repeated violations of the state's open meeting laws, and information from executive sessions have been shared with members of the community by 2 of our board members, Maria Garcia and Luis Gonzalez. These are elected positions that require community trust, and to not follow the basic rules is extremely concerning and makes me wonder what other rules are they breaking in their elected spots. I've actively followed the board's activities and have personally heard of the unfounded attacks on Chancellor Lambert that have acted as an absolute distraction. So now these same board members that have lost public trust are purposely sabotaging the Chancellor's reputation in spite of an extensive track record of success, positioning the college as one of the top community colleges in the country. The community has shown its support in not only supporting the proposition, but in giving money. As a Pima Foundation board member, I can personally speak to the fact that in the last few years, donations have doubled the size of the foundation to 14 million, and we are on target to double that number again. That's because the college is a proven community leader under Chancellor Lambert. They are building people out of poverty and growing our economy, lifting up all residents. And yet we have these two board members who have lost the public trust, attacking the chancellor, and in turn disrespecting the rest of the board, the college faculty, students, investors, and the alumni. Under Chancellor Lambert's leadership, the college is stable and growing and nationally renowned. Now we are at risk for being sanctioned due to the activities of Maria Garcia and Luis Gonzalez. This is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and please drive safely. The next person on the list is Mr. Lawrence Lucero. Mr. Lucero, are you online or in person?
I am online. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Lawrence T. Lucero, better known as Larry Lucero, retired utility executive out of Tucson Electric Power, and previously had worked at Pima County government in employment and training. So I am very familiar with the resources and the opportunities that Pima Community College has presented this community for decades. But it is troubling to me that I have become aware of some missteps by a couple of the board members, as reported in a letter that was noted in your May 11th Pima Community College board meeting from the Office of the Arizona Attorney General. I would hope that this is sorted out by the board and appropriate action is taken to correct those missteps. It is incumbent upon the board to try to work in a collaborative manner. And I've seen that that's been very difficult, but I've yet have confidence that those missteps that have been made aware to you by the Attorney General's letter of May 11th can be corrected, and hopefully some resolution will occur. I leave that to you all to address as your charter calls for. On a positive note, I want to congratulate Chancellor Lee Lambert and his excellent senior leadership team. They have done a masterful job of regaining the certification for the community college, which was lost some time ago, and followed by an intense effort to better understand the needs of employers today and into the future. The college has historically been agile at establishing training programs to meet the needs of our community's employers, but most importantly, meeting the needs of the workforce. As a utility executive, I personally saw the collaborative success between Tucson Electric Power, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and the community college in partnership to take young people and prepare them for the very rigorous apprenticeship training program that the electric utility industry requires. Those graduates are so well trained, and it's a testament to the effort, to the collaborative effort between one employer and the community college system. So for that, I am grateful for your efforts and expect the board to continue to support the vision of Chancellor Lambert. And thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you very much for those comments. Next on the list, we have Howard Stewart. Mr. Stewart, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to comment. Good evening. My name is Howard Stewart. I'm the president, CEO of AGM Container Controls. We're a local Tucson manufacturing company with 120 employees. Started in 1970, AGM has been a part of Tucson's business community for the exact same length of time as Pima itself. So I requested to speak today because both tuition reimbursement and Pima Community College are near and dear to my heart. In fact, in 2019 alone, meaning pre-COVID, 27% of AGM's workforce attended college. This means that 34 AGM employees took 124 courses that year. Of these, 70% elected to attend Pima College because Pima's curriculum is specifically geared towards helping educate our community's workforce. In addition, Pima offers in-person, online, virtual, and hybrid classes, which means that Pima is flexible for any and all workplace schedules. Pima is also a great value considering that their classes cost only 27% of what one would pay to take the same coursework at our local university. However, what's most impressive to me is how in less than a decade, Pima, under Chancellor Lee Lambert's leadership, has radically been transformed from a junior college that was in a virtual death spiral, including a leadership crisis, accreditation, probation, and programs that weren't relevant to employers' needs, and turned it into a juggernaut of an institution, such that we can now boast national leadership in aviation, aviation technology, cybersecurity, health professions, automotive technology, as well as advanced manufacturing. I'm also pleased that Pima emphasizes equity as an extension of their ethical values, in that Pima's leadership is doing everything possible to remove the barriers to student success, especially for people of color. That is why I was recently dumbstruck to learn that at the May 11th board meeting, two members of Pima's Board of Governance, Ms. Garcia and Mr. Gonzalez, have been over the years repeatedly verbally attacking the chancellor, telling untruths, impugning his character, professionalism, and integrity, as well as frequently accuse him of racism, violating procurement policies, and mishandling of college funds. Yet, it's my understanding that despite multiple time-wasting investigations into such matters, every one of these spurious charges has been found to be without merit or evidence. What's more, Arizona's Attorney General recently determined that both of these members have repetitively broken Arizona's meeting laws on various occasions, on various counts, doing so in violation of the laws they vowed to uphold when they initially took their oath of office. Nevertheless, amazingly enough, these troublemaking and disruptive board members are in fact responsible for managing both the chancellor's as well as Pima's mission, which in my mind is akin to putting unscrupulous extremists in charge of running one of this community's most important educational institutions. Accordingly, I respectfully call on both members to do the honorable and appropriate action, in that they should step down from their governing positions in order to let the chancellor and his leadership team complete their worthy ongoing mission. Thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. And we have one last speaker, Mr. Brendan Lyons. Mr. Lyons, are you online? Give me a second. Brendan Lyons, are you online?
Yes, can you hear me?
see? I do. Okay, yes, go ahead. You have the floor.
Chair Ripley, Chancellor Lambert, members of the board, I thank you for your giving me the opportunity to speak today. And as I'm listening to all these speakers speak here, I'm sitting here, and I can't say all of them, but some, I'm embarrassed. As a 3-time associate degree graduate from PCC, I'm embarrassed and appalled. I'm embarrassed and appalled about the accusations lambasted at Chancellor Lee Lambert. As a proud Aztec Gold Advanced Leadership Program graduate from Pima Community College, as a proud Emerging Leaders Program student representative and representative of the 108th Arizona Town Hall focused on building relationships between Arizona and Mexico, I'm embarrassed. As a keynote speaker at Pima Community College's multicultural convocation upon graduating back in 2016, I am embarrassed. And as a featured speaker at Chancellor Lambert's All College Day, I am embarrassed. You see, Pima Community College has given me the tools necessary to become the leader that I am today, a proud leader. I'm an associate member of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council. I'm a proud Flynn Brown Fellow from the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership. I'm part of the Emerging Leaders Council with the Mentorship Committee, as serving as a Mentorship Committee Chair with Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce. I'm part of the Advocacy Committee with Tucson Young Professionals.
Brendan, I think we lost you. You dropped out. Hello? It looks as if Mr. Lyons has dropped off. I don't know if he's on his telephone or not, but we'll give it another couple seconds. Mr. Lyons? Okay, well, not sure if he'll return. With that said, that was our last speaker for public call to the audience, and we can move forward with the next agenda item, which is remarks by the governing board. So with that, I would just like to open the remarks by stating, well, actually, let's just go around the corner, around the horn here. Board Member Garcia, would you like to begin?
Yes, I would. My opinions, and I have my reasons for them. So I just would like to read a statement. I've thought about it since. Anyway, I want to talk to you tonight about the current state of Pima College. I want to emphasize that the teaching and learning success of our students at the college are due to the dedication of our faculty and staff. It is not, as some people seem to believe, that the sole result any one person, namely Lee Lambert. Therefore, the practice of increasing salaries for the executive team and very small or no increases for our faculty and staff should end. I wish to inform the public that the Chancellor's salary and compensation package is greater than $400,000. That is more than the compensation of the city manager of Tucson, the superintendent of TUSD, and the Pima County administrator. While the Chancellor can enjoy his $400,000, county taxpayers will be paying more in taxes next year to support PCC. Students will pay more tuition, yet PCC enrollment has dropped by more than 5,000 students. The Chancellor professes his love for PCC and Pima County, but in the last year he has been an unsuccessful applicant for Chancellor at 3 community colleges, Evergreen College, San Diego, Ventura Community College. Mr. Lambert, aren't you happy at PCC? Instead of traveling to find a new job, perhaps Mr. Lambert should study the U.S. Constitution, specifically the right to due process. Twice in the last few years, federal court judges have found that Mr. Lambert and PCC denied 2 terminated employees their due process. Now a new complaint has been filed against PCC by William Ward, alleging denial of due process when his contract was terminated. Earlier, the Chancellor had removed Mr. Ward from taking part in discussions regarding a proposal from the train company. Let me quote from Mr. Ward's complaint, now in federal court, quote, Chancellor Lambert terminated Mr. Ward's employment because Mr. Ward was candid with the board about the fact that the train company had an unfair advantage during the bidding process, and that he had been removed from the process because he was not willing to ignore procedures and violations of bidding and purchasing process to favor the train company, end of quote. Who will pay the settlement if Mr. William Ward prevails against the Chancellor in its personal capacity?
Point of order.
In my opinion, the Chancellor is in charge of the mission of our community college. Typically, a community college offers various tracks, a full set of classes for students to get their associate's degree and transfer to a 4-year college, classes for adults and those needing to improve their writing and other skills, training or technical jobs. All 3 tracks deserve attention. However, the Chancellor has focused attention and given priority to the technical vocational track. I strongly support technical training, but not when the academic programs are ignored. Who benefits from the Chancellor's emphasis on non-academic vocational programs? Clearly, it is the business community, eager to hire men and women trained by PCC. An election is coming up this fall by board colleagues. Damien Kanko is running for re-election, and he is being strongly backed by guess who? The business community. Mr. Klinko has raised over $113,000. This is unheard of an amount for a PCC board seat. Why? Several business owners have donated the maximum amount of $6,450. I suggest that the people go to the Pima County Elections Department website to download Mr. Klinko's latest financial report. Do the Chancellor and Mr. Klinko want to turn PCC into a vocational institution? See how many new money the Chancellor has allocated for tech. Then judge for yourself. Our Pima College was established to address the needs of all our community. Finally, the few people who are expressing their support for the Chancellor should have waited until we receive the findings of the investigation by the Higher Learning Commission. Time will tell. Was it wise to fully endorse Lee Lambert before the jury has spoken? Thank you.
Actually, Board Member Gonzalez.
Tonight, I want to inform the PCC faculty, staff, students, and the public about the recent focus visit of the Higher Learning Commission, our accreditor. The HLC visit was based on complaint by Mr. Bill Ward, the former Vice Chancellor for Facilities. I want to inform you tonight that this complaint is among multiple complaints filed with the HLC. I have repeatedly asserted the Chancellor wrongfully terminated Mr. Ward. This was done with a tacit approval by Mr. Klinko, Dr. Hay, and Ms. Ripley, the board majority. The public is entitled to understand the basis of Mr. Ward's complaint. In recent months, the Chancellor and other members of the board have alleged Ms. Garcia and I were the reason for the HLC visit. Mr. Ward's complaint states, quote, on June 3rd, 2020, I voiced my concern that the board, Chancellor, Executive Vice Chancellor for Finance Administration, and College Legal Counsel violated purchasing, contract, bidding, process regulations, and statute in order to favor the train company. Quote, notice in that complaint only 3 individuals are named: the Chancellor, Lambert, Executive Vice Chancellor, College Legal Counsel. The Chancellor can spin it all he wants, but he's the party named in this complaint. Ms. Garcia and I are not mentioned. At the board's May meeting, former board member Sylvia Lee demanded Ms. Garcia and I resign. The record indicates that she has a history of demanding PCC board members to resign. In the early 2013, the Star reported that board member Sylvia Lee asked for her 4 PCC board colleagues to resign. Those members did not resign, and neither will I. Perhaps she recalls her apologies to Mr. Mario Gonzalez, as reported by the Arizona Daily Star on March 20th, 2017. Mario, I want to apologize for questioning you were being supportive or trying to sabotage PCC. I have to remind myself that although we differ in many ways, we are similar in that we are passionate about the college and the community, close quote. The culture at PCC has not changed. The public will recall Sylvia Lee, apparently the self-appointed spokesman for Chancellor, feel that she must protect the Chancellor. She should recall that she's not the only one who is passionate about the well-being of the college. In a democracy, it is possible to assert that the Chancellor has overstayed his welcome here on the basis of how one sees his performance. Reasonable people can disagree, except at PCC on this board. Maybe it's time for another board member to understand that there are many sides to every story. The majority is entitled to have their own opinion, but not on their own facts. They have disregarded the facts in some cases for their own agenda. The board majority supports the chancellor, even though the public record shows he wishes to move on. The future of PCC is not dependent on Mr. Lambert being chancellor. After all, he has applied for 3 positions in the past year. Finally, PCC purchased Tucson Inn, which was condemned by the city of Tucson, and 2 other dilapidated motels. How many millions of taxpayers' dollars will be required to renovate these motels? This was not on the PCC most recent educational master plan, yet it appears that Mr. Klinko will continue his preservation efforts at the taxpayers' expense. In summary, Mr. Klinko, do you still believe that I should recuse myself from all Yaqui and Native American issues? The last thing is I want to say in my language, Embam Pokatek. That's a very strong word. It is in your hands. And the final thing I'm going to say is the truth will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that board member Dr. Hay has left. She's overseas, so I will go to board member Klinko for the next board remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Ripley. First, I just want to thank the faculty and the staff and the administrators. One of the very best evenings of the entire year is our graduation, and the graduation this year was held at Keno Stadium, and to see the thousands of graduates cross the stage to receive their certificates and degrees is truly inspiring. It's truly why we are here as a college board, and the function and purpose, which is to provide opportunities and meet learners where they are and take them where they want to go. And seeing that only a few weeks ago really is the genuine mission of this institution. So I just wanted to again thank the faculty and the staff and the administrators and Chancellor Lambert, who worked tirelessly throughout the year to make that happen. And I want to thank the staff who actually mounted and organized the event. It was really outstanding, and I hope we continue to do it outside the Keno Stadium. It was just such a lovely setting. I also want to thank Mayor Romero for her attendance and giving a keynote speech. Her remarks were really inspiring and really, I think, again, speak to the mission and purpose of the institution. Finally, I just want to take a personal moment of privilege and recognize the retirement of Mike Stack, who was a faculty member in our art department on the East Campus. He has just so, I had numerous interactions with Professor Stack, and over the years, it's just been so inspiring to see this Culture on Campus program, the integration of 21st century learning skills in his classrooms, and his strong community participation that has always so proudly represented the college. All of the faculty who work for us day in and day out, improving the quality of life of students, deserve applause. But Mr. Stack really went above and beyond, in my personal opinion, and I just didn't want his retirement to go unnoted. So with that, I'm going to conclude my remarks.
Thank you very much for those remarks as well. And again, we've lost one of our board members who's overseas, but kindly phoned in, even though I think she's about 10 hours later than us. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, either in person or virtually, at our last board meeting before we break for the summer for this school year. It's been yet another challenging year. We've managed to hold our meetings, study sessions, and scores of events, both virtually or hybrid or in person. And I think we've done the best we could. And I'm not just talking about the board, I'm talking about the staff, the faculty, the administrators. Everyone's done a bang up job at keeping the school going, and the students for showing up. The resilience and professionalism that you performed all these duties is really noteworthy, and a testament to the much deeper sense of service and community that we have here at Pima Community College. This is a community college. Everyone here, everyone on this Zoom, everyone associated with it is doing it because they care. There's not a giant fat paycheck involved. We're all here because of service. So thank you so much. And thank you especially for doing all of your part for our most worthy students and to our over 4,500, I believe, graduates, both certificate as well as those going on to 2-year programs. Congratulations, man. I mean, it's been a hard year and you did it. And I was suffering from COVID at the time. I missed the graduation, but I heard it was just phenomenal and a really magical evening. But students, you will always remain in the Pima family, and we hope to see you again anytime in the future if you're in need of furthering your education or coming back to teach. We would love that as well. We're here to champion you. I would like to also pause right now. I think it's important in light of everything that's happened this evening and over the past few weeks to acknowledge all of our collective grief, our sadness, our outrage, and the pain experienced these past few weeks as we go through as a nation and as a community far too often the aftermath of yet another senseless mass shooting involving children and involving our most at-risk minority populations. It's literally breaking my heart. I actually went to the ER. There's simply no words to describe the anguish and pain of the survivors. And I know you've all, read the news, and we all grieve separately, and we all grieve differently. And the fact that these shootings have had a profoundly deep impact on many of us here is proof that we are all connected. Everyone here, we're on Zoom now, but believe me, we are connected as human beings, or as I've heard someone say once, we're souls walking around in human suits. So let's remember that. Collective pain is real and it's debilitating. Please, please, please take care of yourselves mentally and physically as we enter the summer. Grieve silently, grieve outwardly, but nevertheless grieve. It is human. But also take the time to reflect on how we can help future generations, perhaps most humbly here through our community, our humble community college, to become happier, productive, and joyful, thriving citizens. Please take a moment also as we break for the summer to reflect on the many blessings we have as Pima employees, students, and community supporters. I mean, we're a family, so yeah, we can all complain to each other and demand better everything. We all need to be better, all of us. We can all do better, so that's fine. But at the end of the day, let's pull together and do that together. And when we return this fall, I hope we can be more situationally aware of our colleagues, our friends, our families. And it's corny, but kindness goes a long way. There are students and colleagues who are suffering, and we will never, ever know unless we take the time to know. Take the time for acts of kindness. Take the time to know your colleagues. It's contagious. And again, unfortunately, I fell ill during graduation. COVID is real, you guys. It's huge. I'm in, I jog, I'm in shape. I have 3 vaccines and I still got it. And it was horrifying. Again, I was in the ER. It was not fun. It's real, and there's a spike going on right now. This is why I'm on Zoom. So, again, perspective is one thing you gain when you're lying in a hospital bed, not knowing if you're ever going to get up again. The virus is smart. It's evolving. It's quick. It's debilitating. But thankfully, with vaccines and boosters, it's not necessarily deadly. I'm here. So please continue to be vigilant. Please take care of yourselves this summer. And thank you very much for this long board meeting. The public hearing was really important. Passing that budget was huge, so we can go forward. The class and comp was big, and it's big and it's messy, but we got it done, and we're tweaking it. And it's going to take some time to really get to where we need to go with all of the implementations of that. Thank you, finance team, and everybody else, and all of the advisors. Michaela, your remarks are not going unheard. We're going to still work on this. Again, working hand in hand with our business leaders, and there's a lot of talk about this, but we've been talking about this a lot. Our business leaders from industry, IT, I mean, there are 600,000 empty jobs across the country in IT alone, in cybersecurity, the trades, healthcare, public safety, all of these things, all of the trades, as well as the path to 2-year to 4-year colleges is seriously important. But I assure you that board members, myself included, and I know all 5 of us are very interested and profoundly dedicated to ensuring that the liberal arts and all of the other curriculum that we have at Pima is intact, because that's what a community college is. We aren't a VOTEC. We're a community college. So, and personally, as a musician, as an actor, the arts are really important to me. I urge the board to please continue to fulfill our duties as oversight, as cheerleaders, and as good stewards of the mission and goals of our college. I've continued to conduct as much personal research, community outreach, and training opportunities as I could manage in order to fill these duties. It's a lot. It's a lot of work, but it's something that we do out of love for the school and for the students, and mostly for this community. So as we enter this month of June, we also celebrate Pride. I want to make that clear right now. We celebrate Pride across the nation. I know in Tucson we celebrate in September, and I'm filled with hope that our DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion efforts will continue. Again, all of this is evolving. We can all do better. We can all be better, and the DEI efforts are in fact including. And I'm the goal is to someday not need to have a DEI office. That it will be so ubiquitous that we don't even have an office that's called DEI. I'm also filled with hope that we can continue to make progress with the progression and completion rates of all students, especially our Hispanic male and underrepresented student populations. It's huge, it's there. And I know for a fact that people that are working in enrollment and in community outreach, from the provost and president of campuses, it's on the forefront of their minds. I'm hopeful that the newly organized Enrollment and External Relations Committee, which we're standing up, will help us reach every single student who desires an affordable and relevant higher education. This is our goal. We directed the chancellor to conduct that class comp last year. It hasn't been done in years. So I really hope to see that implemented to the satisfaction of everybody. I mean, we briefed already that the average increase is 7%. And I know, perhaps it's not, enough for some people, but it's a great start, and I hope that we can see that implementation. And lastly, I'd like to give a much overdue shout out to our library and IT staffs. This is a personal moment for me. I visit the libraries and I work with the IT staffs at all the campuses, and each and every time I visit, without even them knowing who I am, incognito in a hoodie, I feel immersed in a shower of positivity, welcoming, and joy. I could set up camp and live in one of those libraries. It's that comfortable and that welcoming. And for that reason, I'm quite sure our students must feel the same thing. So thank you for all you do. And for our behind the scenes IT staffs, you make it happen every day with patience, kindness, little thanks, and attention to detail that does not go unnoticed by me, at least. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support and hard work. And with that, I'm going to go on to our next agenda item, thank you, which is the reports. So thank you for indulging me with that. The first up on our administration reports is the strategic enrollment plan by Dr. David Doré. Go ahead, David, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Ripley, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, guests, and students. So Dr. Duran-Cerda and I, we're going to present together because of the intersectionality of both the strategic enrollment plan and the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And these plans are integrated, and really, DEI is the operating system and the lens by which we focus all of our initiatives, including enrollment and retention. So I'll focus on the strategic enrollment plan, and then Dr. Duran-Cerda will focus on the DEI plan. So the strategic enrollment plan is really a multi-year institutional plan that really is focused on identifying, recruiting, enrolling, retaining, and completing, and then reskilling learners in our community. And as you will see in the executive summary, and as you'll see in the full plan, it's very goal-oriented, it's actionable, and it's measurable. And this plan, the work really began in the fall of 2021 with Student Affairs and Enrollment Management. And I really want to thank David Ariano, who has really been the point person leading the work. And we culminated with a community forum at the end of May to discuss both of these plans, and we had about 70 participants. And so this plan really looks holistically at the new landscape of higher education over the next 5 years. And higher education, the landscape has rapidly shifted this last decade. And, there's a lot of forces, including the pandemic, demographic shifts, increased competition, funding changes that really are really affecting learners in Pima County and the greater Tucson community. And the way we learn, the way we teach, the way we provide services has really changed greatly along with our learners' expectations. And so, we are very much focused on this new landscape, and I think we're really shifting the entire organization to respond to some of these new forces. And we're at a pivotal point in terms of, if you look at enrollment projections over the next the next 10 years. Despite there are challenges across the nation in terms of enrollment declines, particularly in community colleges, as you can see from this graphic. But we hope to really gain enrollment over the next over the term of this plan. And as you can see, the trend data shows that there is some potential for growth, but you're going to see some pretty significant declines in terms of that population. And so, that really calls for a really strong enrollment plan. And I'm really proud of the work that everyone has done, I think, to really focus on some of the challenges ahead. Now, again, DEI is the lens by which we view all of our college initiatives. And so both the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Plan and the Strategic Enrollment Plan are really in alignment with two very important institutional goals: to increase completer counts to 6,000 by 2024-25, and to double the completer counts of Hispanic or Latino, American Indian, and Alaskan Native and Black or African American learners by 2024-25. Now, in terms of the SEMP goals, the primary goal of the SEMP is to increase institutional headcount by 4% annually, or 6,500 students per year, culminating in 37,000 students by 25-26. Now, to reach this primary goal, what we've done is we've outlined enrollment goals by various market segments, right? As you can see there, high school graduates, Pima County adult learners, those transitioning to dual enrollment, and other populations. And this is all outlined in your executive summary. And there's some other specific goals as well. Increase persistence by 1% annually, increase retention by 1%, and then increase admission applications by 5% annually, and FAFSA's, that's financial aid applications, by 5% as well. And we have targets for each of these learner populations. And we're really kind of highlighting the importance and value of a college education while breaking down those barriers for those who are really striving for economic and social mobility. Now, the priorities really inform the strategies and tactics necessary to achieve the goal. And I want to just give some examples. So, for example, strategies to support priority number one, which is increase and improve college-wide outreach, recruitment, and marketing efforts to effectively engage and support access to all learners. So what we're going to do here is implement a customer relations management system across all college areas that interacts with prospective students. And then also increasing prospective student engagement and follow-up. Another example to support priority two, which is to improve the college transitioning, onboarding, and enrollment processes for all learners, really to focus a lot more initiatives on encouraging and assisting those adult basic education learners and high school equivalent completers to transition into credit. And so each strategy in the SEMP is assigned to a college administrator to ensure ownership and completion of that strategy, and then the associated activities and on the focused learner segments. And we have performance indicators and timelines for implementation across over the whole life of the plan. And many of the strategies are already implemented and ongoing and on schedule. And this is really a living document in which we will be really be adjusting over the course of the next 5 years. And with that, I want to now turn it over to Dr. Duran-Cerda, who's going to talk more specifically about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dure. So good evening, Chairperson Ripley, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues and guests. I'm very happy to delve a little bit deeper into the DEI plan As you know, we had a first plan in 2017 that was started to acknowledge the establishment of to address access and attainment gaps experienced by our learners in the entire community. And in that first plan, we had a lot of accomplishments. One was the establishment of the office, and also we hired Ilda Ladner, our diversity, equity, inclusion officer. Also across the college, we increased training and awareness regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. We, with faculty affairs, we worked on a hiring framework with faculty to hire diverse faculty. Also, we conducted a DEI climate assessment, and then also established the Immigrant and Refugee Student Resource Center. So the second plan, this plan focused more, this is the next phase, and it really addresses the findings from the DEI climate survey that was conducted in 2021. And the recommendations from several town hall meetings that we had with the community and different sectors was very helpful with establishing the second plan. The plan focuses more on belonging as a strategy for access, retention, and success for all members of the college community. So that means it becomes DEI, as Dr. Dure said, is the lens that we see through for all of our plans. And it is aligned with our institutional goals to double counts and double the completer counts of Hispanic, Latino, Native American, and Black African American learners by 2025. So it really becomes part of everyone's responsibility. Just like enrollment is everybody's responsibility at the college, so is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I wanted to share, we can go on to the next slide. I wanted to share also that the work that took place between September of 2021 to May of 2022 is thanks to Ilda Ladner, our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, and a 25-member team of employees and also students. And they worked on this plan and recommendations actually through data, national best practices, a climate survey, Campus Pride Index results, and recommendations of the DEI climate assessment team. So what you can see here, these are the priorities that the team came up with for recommendations. And the first one, as you see, is the academic equity and student success. The second one, campus climate and culture. Third, employee development and institutional structure for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'd like to provide an example of how we're going to be measuring this. So if we go into the next slide, you can see priority one. We have the strategy example of how we're going to be looking at. This is just one strategy. There are several, but we wanted to share an example with you. So the strategy is the top 3 recommendations from the Breaking Student Barriers Task Force to address issues regarding prerequisites and the gen ed learner routes, which act as barriers to persistence at times. Also, what are the activities? For example, apply DEI lens to review data related to barriers and disaggregating the data as much as possible. And this includes working with not only with the STAR office and faculty and also our deans, but also with, with the community. We want to conduct an audit of policies related to barriers and then do a gen ed, general education redesign with a DEI lens. So the 3 state universities have done their own gen ed refreshes, and it also impacts the AJAC at the colleges, at the community college level. So everybody's basically looking again at the gen eds, and we are too. We haven't seen them really done a deep dive in about 7 years. So continuing with the example is who's responsible. It's the DEI task force working with STAR and the Breaking Barriers leads. Also the Bank of America NCII curriculum subgroup, which I charged a group of faculty and administrators to look at, and they just provided some recommendations. I think it was back in April to the barriers group. And of course, the DEI task force with policyholders having that responsibility too. Looking at KPIs, increasing retention and completion of our Latino, Black, and Native American students, learners, which is directly aligned to the SEMP. And then the timeline, as you can see there, fall of 2022 and ongoing. So the timeline for the new DEI plan, strategic plan, is from 2022 to 2025. And each priority in the DEI plan has aligned strategies and with activities, assigned groups, and performance indicators and timelines, as you see here, which is an example. So with that, I just wanted to provide some examples and see if you have any questions regarding the DEI plan or the SEM plan with Dr. Duray.
Thank you very much. And we have about 5 minutes left for the last item on this topic. Dr. Duray, do we have Nick here? I'm sorry, you are muted, Dr. Duray.
Oh, I believe Nick is here. Is Nick here?
I thought I saw her.
There's Nick. Yes, there's Nick. Nick, we're all ready for you.
All right, great. Let me share my screen and I'll get started. Chair Ripley, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues and guests, I'm here this evening to provide a very brief update on Pima's first climate action and sustainability plan. This plan was developed during 2021 through 2022 by a cross-college team, and the content of the plan was informed by faculty, students, community members, staff, and administrators. Within the plan, we're committing to 4 overarching targets of the primary outcomes we're looking for at the end of the 3 years when the plan concludes. First, reduce greenhouse gas emissions from Scope 1 and Scope 2 sources. These are essentially the sources of greenhouse gas emissions that are either generated directly through our operations, such as fuel in college vehicles, and also those greenhouse gases generated indirectly through, for example, purchased electricity. So that's something we commit to doing during the lifetime of the plan. We also seek to ensure that all learners understand the key principles of climate action and sustainability and can apply them in the field in which they are trained. We recognize as an educational institution, we need to focus on both our own greenhouse gas emissions, but also ensuring all of the students who leave us and go into the workforce know how to bring climate positive practices into those fields. We'll also apply for gold certification through the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. This is a fairly widely used certification system that enables institutions to meet specified criteria and demonstrate that they meet those criteria and that sustainability targets. And this covers multiple different areas across the institution. So this is something we'll look into during the plan. And then finally, we will ensure during the lifetime of the plan, we develop a 5-year plan carrying us through to 2030 that will result in at minimum a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And this is specifically will lead to the completion of the strategic plan goal, which led to this initial development work. While the targets are the outcomes we're seeking to reach, through the plan, we identify 5 priorities that contain the specific strategies and actions that will be carried out by the college to see us be successful on those targets. We have within these energy reduction. This includes a number of different things, reducing our energy use, but also looking into expanding the use of renewable energy. Climate change and sustainability in the curriculum. This seeks to infuse climate awareness and sustainability in our courses, in our programs. And this is kind of the key piece for where we'll meet that second of the institutional targets. And I would note for this one, particularly important, this isn't about credit programs only. This is about all offerings of the institution, so credit and non-credit. Through priority 3, we focus on engagement and education. We've already been working to establish relationships with the community and to get active with the community in different climate-related events, and we will expand and build on that during the 3rd priority. And then in priority 4, we'll inventory our greenhouse gas emissions. This is a somewhat dry in a way step, but it's a necessary step. We need to know our baseline of our greenhouse gas emissions, both for carbon and nitrogen, and that will enable us to attach a specific numerical target to the first target, a numerical value to the first target, so we can commit openly, publicly to exactly what we're going to be doing. And then lastly, we seek to infuse climate action and sustainability college-wide. This includes activities ranging from establishing a sustainability office through to a detailed focus on water resources. And this is a particularly important topic to the climate team, and one where we've discussed potentially adding a target in the area of water use as we get into year 2 of the plan. Full details about the strategies and actions are included in the plan, which is part of the board materials, should anybody wish to look in more detail. I would like to end by thanking the members of the climate planning team. They have worked incredibly hard this year and done really outstanding work. We have a very strong plan. It's ambitious but achievable, and it's going to really help the college position itself to be a very climate positive institution in the future. And we have that plan because of the hard work of everybody you see listed here on this slide. And with that, that's the kind of high level summary of the plan we have in place, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board on either of these 3 topics? Thank you so much for that. Those are these 3 topics are near and dear to the board. They're crucial, and I know there's a lot of behind the scenes work that's happening on a daily basis that aren't even represented, even a slice on these slides. So thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for keeping the board updated. It's hugely important to us. Thank you so much. Without any other questions or discussion, the next item on the agenda are reports by representatives to the board. We have 5 minutes for that, and it looks like there's only one person that's here, staff member Erica Elias.
Good evening, Chairperson Ripley, members of the board, Chancellor, and guests. I have very few updates right now. The first update I have is from the All College Council. A vote was taken on preferred designs for the gender neutral bathrooms, and there was a lot of support for this endeavor. The second update that I have comes from Student Affairs. The Academic Success Counselors will be facilitating mental health screenings once a semester to help connect students to mental health services and resources. This was already implemented this semester, and it was received very well by students, and also staff members came and told us how much they appreciated the efforts. Those are the only updates I currently have. I hope everybody has a good and safe summer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica. That's hugely important. Taking care of our own, especially with mental health care, is really huge. Thanks for that. And lastly, on the reports, we have Chancellor Lambert. Chancellor, you have the floor.
So thank you, Chairperson Ripley. I guess this is the first time I stand in the way between all of us and the ending of the meeting. So with that said, I just want to say I'm proud of all of you for what we've done over the last year and beyond. I mean, if you step back and think about what we have accomplished and achieved over the 2+ years, it's nothing short of amazing. So thank you all for what you do. And I think tonight is a culmination of that when you saw Doctors Doré, Ron Serta, and Richmond just present on 3 critical plans of the college all starting to come together. But behind that is a lot of individuals. And Hilda being one of those key players on the DEI side, Dr. Irene Robles Lopez, and hopefully soon to be Dr. David Ariano with the SIMP plans, and Suzanne Desjardins, Dr. Suzanne Desjardins around that, and then Nick's phenomenal leadership with the climate action plan. It just speaks, volumes. But if you peel back, what you also see is an example of DEI being integrated and infused into what we do. Each one of those plans have a diverse representation of employees across the spectrum of the college to make that happen. So that's what we mean by the intersectionality, right? It's not, oh, we're going to have more individuals of color, more individuals disability. It's like, that's not enough. It's like, how do you integrate them into the overall operation of the institution? That's where we're headed as we speak. And I think you saw some examples of that this evening. So I just want to say I'm proud of all of you. I want to thank Mayor Romero for being our graduation speaker. It's so phenomenal when your mayor is so proud to talk about their community college. And we're so lucky to have Mayor Romero, who also attended Pima and now also being willing to speak proudly of her institution in this great community of ours. I want to thank Dr. Bruce Moses for his service to the college. And I wish you the best, Bruce, as you move on to assume your first presidency. A small group of us had an opportunity to visit Raytheon, and we got to experience their new immersive learning center. I don't know if that is new, but it's newer. And I think it starts to set a standard of how we need to think about today and the future of what's going to happen with work, and starting to look at how we incorporate more of this immersive learning pieces for our students as they enter into this next stage of the 21st century. Also, I want to thank the police department under our police chief Neuenhuis and their response recently, following the tragedy of Uvalde. We had an incident here locally. Fortunately, it did not turn out in any way to be, a significant impact to individuals' lives. But that's because our officers were on site, they were responsive, and they addressed the problem. So I just want to thank all of our officers for what they do. And sometimes they get overlooked, but when we need them, they were there. So thank you. Also, we just got approved to be a second chance Pell site. I mean, this is huge. This is going to allow us to offer Pell to incarcerated individuals who are pursuing certifications in areas that have employment opportunities when they get out. So these are typically individuals within 5 years of release. They're studying things that are going to prepare them to come back into society and reintegrate successfully. And so I'm just so proud that we're going to be able to offer that to individuals in our community. Also, just to show an example of what Dr. Richmond just talked about, the curriculum being a key part of the sustainability, I want to just do a shout out to Nancy Spalding in our fashion design program, because they've already been leading the way, partnering with Goodwill of Southern Arizona, creating a fashion and sustainability partnership where students are learning how to integrate all of that into fashion. And it's phenomenal. And maybe one day we could have Nancy do a great presentation for us in that regard. Also, I want to thank Phil and Christy and the team and Dan for just, unfortunately, I couldn't be at graduation, but I've heard they just did a phenomenal job. And I just want to, add my thanks to what they did. And Christy and her crew just do an amazing job every year. I'm just glad we can start having on-site graduations again. And I just wished I could have been there. Also, I want to just acknowledge Terry Robinson for a moment, because he has been selected as the manager of the year for 2022 by the Copper chapter of the Institute for Public Procurement. We have one of the leaders in public procurement right here at Pima Community College. And so, Terry, I want to thank you. But I recognize it's not just about Terry, it's about his team and what they do to make sure we run a clean, efficient, effective processes as we procure things that are important to what we need here at Pima Community College. So thank you, Terry. Also want to recognize Dr. Irene Robles Lopez. She has been selected by the Victoria Foundation to be the Dr. Alfredo G. De Los Santos Jr. Outstanding Latina of the Year. So thank you, Irene, for what you do. And we're very fortunate to have you part of the Pima team and family and to just represent us. And so we're just lucky. We have outstanding employees of the college. And yes, things can't be done by me alone. It's not about me, but it's also about having a compelling vision. And I think that through our combined work together, we have put forth that compelling vision. And that's what we're running forward with. And I think the support we're hearing about really reflects that. And you all are key to making that happen. Let me just close with just a few pieces. Sorry you couldn't be at the last board meeting. That was the last night my father was alive. And I was just grateful that I could be there to see him. Yeah. So thank you all for allowing me to be away from all of you so I could be with him one last time. I also want to recognize the folks at Ventura. They are an amazing group of individuals, and I wish them the best. I'm sorry that I decided not to accept their position, and I wish them the best of luck as they go forward. They are also an exemplar college district, just like Pima Community College is. So they have so many wonderful assets, and I think that we can learn from each other as we continue to do better by our students in our respective communities. So with that, Chair Ripley, I just want to say thank you to all of you again for the tremendous support and outpouring. I mean, the cards, the flowers from faculty, staff, it was overwhelming and very positive. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And the last point I'll make, and this has made a big difference for me in the Ventura piece. I knew on that Tuesday before I got the phone call that a tremendous amount of folks in Pima County were working on a letter asking that I stay. That made a big difference for me. But I also was contacted by the mayor. That also made a big difference for me. And I think that speaks loudly about this great community of ours. And that played a big role. I want to stay here until I retire. And that is my hope. And so let's keep doing the great stuff we're doing together. So thank you all, and please have a great summer. And for those of you who'll be around, I'll look forward to working with you over the break. Good night.
Thank you so much, Chancellor, for your remarks, and our hearts do go out to you as well as they go out to others who have lost family members here on this Zoom right now, just in the last week as well. And so this really concludes our board meeting for this school year. The information items are posted for you to read at your leisure. And I wanted to give one last, I know there's a million shout outs, I could go on forever, but the online team, I just finished my first online course. I took Spanish 101 at Pima Community College, and I did, well, let's just say I passed, but it's a great program. And I can see so much that goes on behind the scenes, and it's a lot harder than you think as far as teaching it, as far as being a student, as far as all the work that gets put into it, but it's worth it and it's wonderful. And without it, many people could not even attend or get any kind of learning, let alone certificates and degrees. So thank you online, all the online folks and my professora Jessica. So with that, is there any motion to include any action items or information items for the next board meeting? If not, just keep in touch and we'll try to include them in September. And with that, I would like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much. Have a safe.
Sorry, hold on a second. What was that, Andre? Oh, right.
Sorry,
so,
I'm here.
Ms. Ripley.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I know in the on the items to review, we were going to have possibly an update reference to the response from HLC or the report from HLC. Any inquiries, or where are we at?
I believe we're still waiting.
So
But nothing has been received then.
Well, so
Chairwoman Ripley, my recommendation is that we put it on the agenda for our future meeting because we
Yeah,
can't.
This is not on the agenda, so.
It hasn't been agendized and we're still waiting. So it will definitely, I'm hoping they're taking a long time. We'll absolutely have it hopefully in the September agenda for future agenda items.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one point of clarification, there had been some discussion about having a study session before the end of June to complete the bylaw process. Is that still the pleasure of the board, or would you rather schedule that at the end of the summer?
Board members, do you have any input on that?
I think we should get it
I
done.
need some time.
I think we should get it done before the end of the, as soon as possible. I mean, that was what we discussed.
And I
Okay,
think we should
and
wait
anyone
till
else?
the
Sorry.
HLC makes its recommendation.
Sorry, Board Member Garcia, I didn't hear what you had to say. It's overlapping. Go ahead, say. Board Member Garcia, I couldn't hear.
I think we should wait until after the HLC comes back with its findings before we approve the bylaws.
Okay, so that may or may not happen between now and the 28th. So are we basically tentatively scheduling it for the 28th? And if not, we can regroup and schedule it at a later date. So how about a tentative 28 June schedule? Is that good for everyone?
Tentative's okay.
Okay, great. We'll tentatively schedule it for 28 June. Is that, Mr. Sylvan, we'll try to coordinate that in times. Okay, other than that, any other future agenda items? Okay, the next meeting is in September, and I now adjourn this meeting of Pima Community College Governing Board. Thank you very much, everyone. Be safe.